I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. It started on a Tuesday night that felt exactly like every other Tuesday night. I was at my friend Jason Carter's house, sitting on the edge of the couch while he argued with someone in an online game upstairs. The living room smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and something warm from the kitchen. That was when I heard her. "Jason, did you leave your shoes in the hallway again?" Her voice wasn't loud, just calm, slightly tired. I've been to Jason's place dozens of times growing up, but somehow I'd never really noticed his mom before. Maybe she was always working late. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention back then. But that night she walked into the living room carrying a mug, and something about it slowed everything down. Her name was Lena Carter, mid-40s, maybe a little older. She had her hair loosely tied back like she'd been meaning to fix it properly, but forgot halfway through the day. She glanced at me. Not the quick, polite glance adults give their kids' friends. A real look. "Oh," she said softly. "You're Daniel, right?" I blinked. "Yeah." She nodded, once like she'd just confirmed something important, then leaned against the kitchen counter across the room. Steam drifted up from her mug. "You always sit on the left side of the couch," she added casually. It took me a second to realize she was right. Guess I do." She smiled a little. Not big, just enough to make it clear she knew something small about me that I didn't know she noticed. Upstairs, Jason shouted something at his headset. The house settled into that quiet background noise of a normal night. Fridge humming, a clock ticking somewhere near the hallway. I looked down at my phone out of habit. 3 conversations open. No messages sent. 1 half-typed text to someone I probably wasn't going to send anything to. I locked the screen. When I looked up again, Lena was watching me in a way that felt patient, like she'd been observing things quietly for a long time. "You boys still order that same pizza every week?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Pepperoni." She tilted her head. "You don't even like pepperoni." I laughed under my breath. "How would you know that? You always pick it off." I felt something strange settle in my chest. Not dramatic, just the feeling of realizing someone had been noticing things I thought no one did. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of a paper napkin on the coffee table, folding the corner without really thinking. She noticed that too. Her eyes flicked down to my hands for half a second, then back up. "You're quieter than you used to be," she said. There wasn't judgment in it, just observation. "I guess people get busy," I replied. She hummed softly like she didn't completely believe that answer. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The kind of pause that feels longer than it actually is. Jason's game ended upstairs. I heard his chair scrape. Lena pushed off the counter and started toward the hallway, but she stopped beside the couch. "You're still working nights at that bookstore?" she asked. "Yeah." Her fingers tapped lightly against the mug. "Late nights can get lonely." It wasn't a question. I shrugged. "Sometimes." She nodded slowly, then walked toward the kitchen. I watched her go, noticing the small way she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. I probably would have forgotten the whole moment if things had ended there. But about 15 minutes later, while Jason was talking nonstop about his game, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message. Unknown number. I glanced down. It said, "This is Lena. I hope it's not strange that I have your number." Jason left his phone unlocked once. I stared at the screen. Another message appeared a few seconds later. "Do you still work at the bookstore tomorrow night?" The bookstore felt smaller that night. Rain still pattered softly against the windows, though fewer drops now. I stacked some new arrivals, pretending not to notice Lena leaning against the counter, her tea untouched. "You always arrange them by author?" she asked, nodding toward the piles. "Yeah," I mumbled. "Helps me think." Her eyes lingered on my hands as I flipped a paperback over and over, like she was trying to read something I didn't know I was writing with my fingers. I wanted to ask if she'd stay longer, just a little, but my mouth felt like it had forgotten how. The silence stretched. Not awkward exactly. Tense. Close enough that I noticed the faint scent of her perfume, faint vanilla under something older, warmer. I cleared my throat. "Jason's birthday's next week," I said. "Dumb. Random." She smiled, a brief flicker that made me want to hold on to it. "Right. You help plan it." Somewhat." She nodded. Did she read something in that hesitation? I wasn't sure. I kept poring over the new books, stacking, unstacking. Her presence made me forget what I'd meant to do. My fingers grazed the edge of the counter. Hers brushed against mine as she reached for a book. A touch so slight it could have been accidental, but my chest caught anyway. Then the bell over the door rang. Jason, late for a last-minute errand, his voice echoing in the tiny store. "Hey, Daniel," he called, oblivious to everything between us. Lena's head turned sharply, the spell broken. She straightened, smoothing her hair back like she could erase the tension that had just settled. I exhaled without realizing. My shoulders loosened, but not completely. "Guess I should go," she said softly. Her hand lingered on the counter as if it didn't want to let go. I wanted to tell her to stay. I wanted to ask why she'd come at all, but I said nothing. Jason's footsteps drew nearer. Lena gave a small nod, then started toward the door. I picked up my cup of tea, pretending to sip, but my eyes followed her. She paused just inside the doorway, looking back over her shoulder. That look, not a smile, not exactly longing, just an unspoken question. I stepped forward, hesitated. My hand almost reached for hers again. Almost. My heart thudded loud enough that I feared she could hear it. The moment stretched. Could I? Should I? Then Jason called from outside the store, impatient. Lena's eyes flicked briefly to the door, then back to me. I should probably get back," she said. Her voice faltered slightly. Something unspoken hovered between us, desire and caution, curiosity and fear. I stayed frozen for a heartbeat longer than I should have. My fingers itched to reach for her again, to close that tiny distance. But she turned, and the space opened. I watched her walk into the rain, hair damp at the ends, coat clinging lightly to her shoulders. I realized I'd been holding my breath. And for a moment, I almost crossed the line. Almost. Her image lingered even as Jason's voice pulled me back to the ordinary, the mundane, the impossible. The park was nearly empty that evening. A chill hung in the air, the kind that made your jacket feel too thin, and the benches were slick with leftover rain. I walked slowly beside Lena, our steps out of sync, the sound of our shoes on wet pavement the only steady rhythm. "You always walk this way?" she asked, glancing sideways. I shrugged. "I guess. I just follow the path." She said nothing for a while. The silence between us didn't feel awkward. It felt heavy, like it was waiting for something to happen. I noticed the way her hands rested on her lap, fingers twisting the strap of her bag. Small habits she probably didn't realize I was memorizing. You saw me at the bookstore," she said quietly. "I didn't plan to." "You didn't have to plan it," I said. My voice was softer than I meant. Her eyes flicked toward mine. For a moment, she seemed suspended in thought. "Daniel, I shouldn't." I stopped walking, and she hesitated too. The world narrowed to the thin strip of pavement and the faint glow of a street lamp. I wanted to tell her something I couldn't put into words. "I think about you," I said before I could stop myself. My throat went dry. More than I should. She blinked, a micro-expression I caught too late. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. "I shouldn't," she whispered. Her voice cracked just enough that it wasn't just about the words. It was everything she'd held back. I looked down at my shoes, suddenly aware of how ordinary the world felt, and how extraordinary this felt at the same time. "You don't know what you do to me," I murmured. "Just being here, talking, smiling." Her hand twitched, a brush of the bag strap. She laughed softly, but it wasn't humor. It was a shield. "I have boundaries," she said finally. "You know that, right?" "Jason, everything I know," I said. I did, and that knowledge made the ache worse. We walked again, slower this time. The park was empty enough that our words, or lack of them, felt louder than the rain dripping from tree branches. I wanted to reach for her hand. I wanted to close the gap between hesitation and certainty. Instead, I let my fingers brush against the edge of the bench we passed, pretending to steady myself. My chest was tight. Do you ever imagine what would be like if I started then stopped? My mind scrambled. The words I couldn't say hovered between us like mist. She didn't look at me. She only adjusted the collar of her coat. We kept walking, and yet the air between us was charged, every step amplifying the things we wouldn't say, the possibilities that might never exist. Finally, she slowed. I slowed. A pause stretched longer than a heartbeat. Her eyes lifted to mine. Small, careful, searching. "I shouldn't want this," she said, almost a whisper. And I realized she did want it. I wanted it too. But the space between wanting and doing felt infinite. And then she asked, or maybe it was just thought made visible in her gaze, "What happens if we cross the line?" The next week was quiet. Too quiet. I showed up at the bookstore on my usual night, expecting to see her leaning against the counter, maybe brushing a stray hair behind her ear, maybe smiling at me with that careful, knowing look. But the counter was empty. Der Undotet. Her coat gone. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. The rain outside picked up, tapping insistently against the windows. My fingers traced the edge of the counter like I could coax her back from memory alone. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Can't meet tonight. Sorry." I stared at it, rereading it twice. Her words were polite, minimal, but the weight behind them pressed down in ways text couldn't fully carry. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Eventually, I just put the phone down, staring at the rain on the glass. The next night, same routine, same result. Empty store, empty teacup, no Lena. I walked past her house once, early in the evening. Lights on, but curtains drawn. I imagine her reading somewhere, maybe sipping coffee, maybe staring at her phone like she'd hoped to see my name on the screen. I kept imagining. Then a fragment of memory hit me. At the park, her pause, the quick flicker in her eyes. Something unspoken, something real. I had assumed it was about me. But maybe there were other pieces I hadn't seen. A week later, I ran into Jason. He didn't notice me at first, talking loudly about some friend from college. And then, when he did, he said, "Mom's busy these days." I laughed, but it came out brittle. "Busy with what?" "Stuff," he said. "You know, work, life, us." His casual shrug felt like a door closing. Or maybe it had always been closed, and I'd only just noticed. I stopped sending texts. I stopped imagining her walking into the bookstore. The silence wrapped around me, not loud, not dramatic, just there. The echo of tea cups, the faint scent of vanilla, the warmth that lingered even when she didn't. Some nights I thought about calling. Other nights, I thought about pretending nothing happened. A week turned into 2. I passed the bookstore, lingering just long enough to see her shadow moving inside, then walked on without knocking. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. Her seat remained empty, her tea cold, and somewhere between my hesitation and her silence, the line between wanting and doing blurred into an almost impossible space. I picked up my phone once, typed her name, deleted it, and left it there. I found her in the kitchen that evening. Not the bookstore, not the park, just her kitchen, dimly lit, a single lamp casting a warm glow over the counter. She was rinsing a cup, hands submerged in sudsy water, the quiet sound of running tap filling the space between us. I lingered in the doorway, didn't step forward, didn't speak. She didn't turn. "Daniel," she said softly, without looking up. I took a step closer, feeling the floor creak beneath my weight. I came by because I needed to see you," I admitted. Voice low, hesitant. The words hung there. Not dramatic, just real. She finally set the cup down. With hands pressed against the counter. Slowly, carefully she looked at me. Those same eyes that had unsettled me weeks ago. Now they were open, raw. "You could have stayed away," she said. "I thought about it," I said. "Every day." A pause. Neither of us moved. The quiet was heavy, almost fragile. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she whispered. "You know that." "I know," I said. And I did. It made my chest ache, the weight of knowing how precarious this was. She took a breath, long and shaky. Her gaze drifted to the counter, to the steaming kettle. Her fingers tapped lightly against the edge. Something small, habitual grounding. "I don't want to hide it anymore," I said. "The way I feel. It's been," my voice trailed off. Couldn't finish. Too many consequences tangled with the truth. She swallowed, eyes returning to mine. "I feel it too," she said. "Just that. Simple. Honest." The words carried more weight than any declaration, more than any kiss, more than any dramatic gesture could. I stepped closer, but not too close, just enough that our shoulders brushed lightly. "Okay," she said. No big smiles, no promises, no sweeping statements about what would happen. Just a quiet acknowledgement that we were here, together. For now. We stood there, hands almost touching on the counter, our breaths mingling in that small kitchen. The silence settled, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was full of understanding. And then she offered me a small, fleeting smile. Not theatrical, not forced, just human. A smile that said more than we could articulate. I let my hand hover for a second near hers. Didn't move, didn't pull back, just felt the possibility. "Okay," I whispered back. We didn't need more. Not yet. Not now. For the first time in weeks, the tension loosened. Not erased, not solved, just eased. And somehow that was enough. Weeks passed, then months. The bookstore quiets still held that soft hum of familiarity, but now it wasn't just mine to inhabit. Lena would appear sometimes in the early evenings, coat damp from rain, a thermos of black coffee in her hand, her eyes flicking toward mine like a secret greeting. No words were needed. Just that glance was enough to fold the weeks of absence into something tangible, something shared. We fell into routines that weren't perfect, but they fit. Saturday mornings on the park bench, coffee steaming between us, the same worn path beneath our feet. Sometimes we didn't speak at all, letting the world fill the spaces between words. Other times, small confessions slipped out, half-formed, just enough to remind us we were still learning each other. I caught myself noticing the little things again. The way her fingers brushed against the cup when she poured tea, the faint scent of her shampoo lingering long after she'd left, the subtle tilt of her head when she asked about some trivial detail of my day. Jason noticed too, in quiet ways. Not a word about the nights we spent lingering at the park or the bookstore. Just small nods of acknowledgement, an easy smile, a chair left pulled out for her when he came over. And for me, that mattered. Not the dramatic gestures or grand statements, but the quiet acknowledgement that we had found a way to exist alongside the life we hadn't expected to share. One evening, I arrived at the bookstore a little earlier than usual. The lamp over the counter was on, casting a warm glow. She was there, stirring her tea, lost in thought. I leaned against the doorway, watching her fold a napkin absent-mindedly, the same way I always did. "Coffee?" I asked, though I already knew. She looked up, eyes soft, and smiled that small, knowing smile that had first caught me months ago. "Black," she said, and it was the kind of answer that felt like home. We sat in silence, side by side, our cups warming our hands. Outside, the rain tapped against the windows in a quiet rhythm, just like that first night I saw her in the bookstore. But now, the sound carried no ache, only presence. At 8:47 a.m., the clock above the counter ticked past, unnoticed. We didn't rush, didn't speak more than needed. And yet, everything had shifted. The months of hesitation, pauses, and almost were folded into the comfort of this simple, unspoken understanding. Later, when she finally stood to leave, her thermos empty and coat buttoned, our fingers brushed ever so lightly. No words were exchanged, no promises, but the warmth lingered long after the door closed behind her. I stayed leaning against the counter, watching her shadow disappear down the street. And for a moment, I realized that love doesn't always need fireworks. Sometimes it's the quiet things, the shared bench, the black coffee, the glance across a room, that make everything matter. And as I poured myself another cup of tea, I thought quietly, a thought only I would ever say aloud. She remembers my order. She always has. The ordinary, the small, the human, it was enough.